and I am the creator of the television series Gargoyle. I lost every single person who's about to come onto this stage, but because my memory is shot, I have a list in front of me so that I don't forget anybody. Are they all back there? Is everyone there? All right, so you're going anywhere. So coming out first, we have the voice of Angela, Brigitte Bako. How about now? Yeah, well, you wanted to be next? Say hi.
Do you have to switch it on? Is it on?
It should be on.
Are you on? Yeah. Look how long my thingy is. I don't know what this is, but it's long. I think it's the longest one here. Thank you.
Next, we have the voice of Lexington, Thom Adcox. Next, we have the voice of Alexander Fox Xanatos, Erin Robinson.
Yay! Erin!
The inspiration for and the voice of Scheherazade, Zehra Fazal. The artist of the Bad Guys comic book series, Karine Charlebois. Co-host of From the Erie, the Gargoyles podcast, Jennifer L. Anderson. The other co-host of From the Erie, Greg Bishansky. And last but not least, definitely not least, the voice of Goliath, Keith David. I'm very happy. This is a motley crew. This is mostly, as usual with any panel with me, I have prepared absolutely nothing for you people today. But I do have, so mostly what we're going to have is Q&A from the audience. I've got one question of my own, so you don't need to line up next because by the time we get through this one question with everyone, the panel will be nearly over. But, knowing these people, but, or really knowing me. Yeah, we've got mics here and there, so eventually line up. If you want to start now, you can, but we are going to open this up to questions for the audience. But I do have one question I want to start everyone off with, and we'll just go down the row. So we'll start with you, Brigitte.
I'm in the wrong seat. First.
She specifically asked to sit next to me.
He's my crib notes. He's my crib notes. I don't.
Question is very personal, so I can't crib you for this.
Okay.
After 30 years, what does Gargoyles mean to you? So you people all have time. But what does Gargoyles mean to you?
guys, it means everything. I can only speak for myself because I'm going first. They're all going to probably say the same thing. But as an artist, if you're lucky, you get something that has a legacy and lives on. And when I came to do this job, I think I was getting over a boyfriend or something. It seemed like a good thing to do in between movies. And I never dreamed that it would have this incredible run and this incredible fan base, and that it would still be calling me up 30 years later. And I'm so super proud of it. And then, of course, the other thing that I just, listen, bucket list, guys. I'm a fucking action figure. I mean...
Damn straight.
I want to say one thing. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but they drew me pretty flat-chested, and I went, really? And they fixed it. Thank you.
Tommy?
Oh, gosh. Well, I want to say, going first. No. I agree with Brigitte. It's been everything. This has been so great. It's been more than just a job. It's been family. You know, Greg and Erin and Beth and Benny and all. It's like family, and it's just been such an amazing experience. And this was my very first animation job. In my first voiceover job. So to be in that room and sit with the people that were in there, and it was I was so starstruck. You know, I walk in there and Ed Asner was there, and Keith David's there, and Laura San Giacomo, and all these people, and it was just the best. And I could dress in shorts and T-shirts and didn't have to learn any lines, which is my enemy, my hell, is learning lines. So it's just been everything, and it means everything to the bottom of my heart. The fan club, the fans. I'm starting to get choked up. It's just great. That's so.
Yeah.
Erin.
Well, you stole my answer. It feels like family to me. I'm Greg's daughter. And when I was growing up, like most of my childhood, Gargoyles was already finished airing live, but we would watch episodes every night, and my dad printed out these little sheets that had all the episode numbers on it, and me and my little brother would get to check off each episode after we've seen it.
Oh,
and
my God.
that, like, I have vivid memories of fighting with my brother over the pen that would work, and like I really want to check this off, and we would go through all the seasons, and it was just really magical, and this is so magical, so thank you.
I'll say for me, as a 10-year-old watching Gargoyles when it first aired, Gargoyles gave me the gift of vision. It was a way to see this amazing fantasy adventure world that kind of gave me a glimpse as to this is how I want to feel as I grow up and go into the world. I want to have adventure. I want to have romance. I want to have this Shakespearean stakes and words and story. And Gargoyles also gave me vision. It was the thing that made me draw. It was the thing that made me get into comic books. And it was the thing that at age 16 brought me to a little convention called the Gathering of the Gargoyles, where I met so many of us here, and also this man, and I'm sorry, Greg, I'm gonna get a little emotional. As a young person, it means everything. When someone you admire and respect looks at you and says, I see this talent in you. You should nurture this talent. Greg, you gave me that gift. You gave me that vision for myself, and it has resulted in the career I have today. So, thank you for the vision.
For me, Gargoyles has been, it was something that I didn't know I wanted to see on TV. It was an inspiration for drawing, an inspiration for my art. It was the thing that got me some of the best friends I have today that I met through the fandom of Gargoyles. And, you know, my maid of honor here. And it's pushed me to become a better artist, meeting the other artists in the fandom. You know, you're hot shit when you're the only one who can draw. And then when you meet other people who can draw, you go, oh, I know nothing. So being with other artists in the Gargoyles fandom has pushed me to become a better artist, has pushed me to pursue a career in animation. And I have been working in animation since 1996, and Gargoyles has been really, really big for me to get where I am today. I got to work on the Gargoyles comic. Like, can you imagine drawing the things I saw on TV? Like, for you guys. That's amazing. And today being able to be here with all of you guys and knowing that I contributed to that love of the property through my drawings, it's amazing to me. That's just one of the best gifts. And yeah, so today I'm now directing in animation, and it's all because of that. Like, I started with Gargoyles, and that's where I am today. So it means a lot.
Always been an animation nerd. This show, though, like, brought me back into my art, brought me back into creativity, brought me some of the best friends I've ever had in my life. So to me, this is community. This is our clan. This is who we are. I'm gonna cry, so no.
To me, it just opened the door to so many amazing worlds. The worlds these people created and helped bring to life. The amazing people that I got to meet through this. Up here, and many of you out there. Who could ask for better?
Is it my turn now? I mean, when you hear phrases like the gift that keeps on giving, in my life, in my career, and in my life, Gargoyles is the gift that keeps on giving. It started, you know, I remember the day that I walked in and had that audition, and it was like in my wheelhouse. You know, I love this material. I love this stuff, and it was just like the rest was history. All these wonderful actors that I, you know, got to work with, and I mean, there was a great movie called The Fighting 69th, and at the end of the movie, Alan Hale says about James Cagney's character, whose name was Plunkett. He says, from now on, when I hear the name of Plunkett, I'm going to stand at attention and salute. And that's the way I feel about Greg Weisman. You know, when I think about, you know, you talk about, you know, opportunities. I mean, it gave me something that I wanted to do my whole life. You know, and the character. I mean, when I grow up, I still want to be like Goliath. And you know, it's, you know, I mean, I you know, as has been said, the gift of family and the gift of, you know, the friends that, you know, it just, that doesn't go away just because it's not on the air. And then because of repeats and what do you call it? What do you call the streaming and all this, whatever else? It doesn't go away. So I'm just happy to be here, folks.
What about you, Greg?
So Gargoyles premiered in 1994, 30 years ago. Not quite, because it was actually October. So we're a few months short, but close enough.
Close enough for Jack.
And I'm 60. So this represents the through line of half of my life. Erin was born in August of 1994, just a few months before it premiered. When we were working on, which was the last voice recording I supervised, which was the first episode of the Goliath Chronicles. By that time, Xanatos and Fox had a kid, Alexander Fox Xanatos. And my daughter, who was 1, used to say doggy a lot. Not necessarily when there was a dog around. She just said it all the time. So I was writing this script called The Journey, which was the first episode of the 3rd season. And I was not producing the 3rd season. I had been invited not to produce the 3rd season by Disney. But they were so behind schedule that they asked me to write the first episode, and so I wrote this episode, and there's a scene where Alexander looks up and sees Lexington and says, doggy. And Lexington tries to correct her and says, no, gargoyle. And Alex says, doggy. So my wife, Beth, we brought Erin to the recording studio. Everyone had recorded the episode. And then we brought Erin in. She sat on Beth's lap. And she was just, prior to sitting down, she was going, doggy, doggy, doggy. Then she sat down in front of the mic. Nothing. Nothing. I wrote the part for her. Nothing.
You can't tell me what to do, okay?
What?
You can't tell me what to do.
I can't tell her. I still can't tell her what to do. That's what Andrew, her husband, is thinking also. And finally, we searched around, and in the green room, we found a magazine, and we found a picture of a dog, and we held it up in front of her, and she said, doggy, once. I needed it twice. She would not say it again. So we ended up just duping the line so that Alex would say doggy twice. But my point to this story, other than I knew it would bring a lot of laughs and make people smile, is that this show has meant the world to me. I mean, I've done a lot of shows since that I'm proud of. Spider-Man, Young Justice, many others, Star Wars Rebels, etc. But nothing in my life is like Gargoyles. And these people are my family. I love every single person up on this stage. They mean the world to me. There are a bunch of you out there. I am, by the way, blinded. I can't see any of you. But I assume you're there, and I love you guys too. And we're so happy to be here celebrating the 30th anniversary. We're so happy you came to help us celebrate the 30th anniversary. And look at this. We've got an hour and 10 minutes to answer your questions. Go.
Good evening. It's incredible to be here. with all of you. So my question is for you, Greg, specifically. So you have talked before.
Endlessly. I mean, I don't even know what it is yet, and God knows I've talked endlessly about it.
I've been on Ask Greg on many a midnight hour. But you've talked extensively about how before you produced Gargoyles, you were a developmental executive at Disney TVA. And you helped develop shows like Darkwing Duck and Bonkers, the Miranda Wright version. What I am curious about, that I don't know that you've ever said in these specific words, was it expected that you would eventually make a show of your own, or was that something you pushed for because you wanted to?
So I was a development executive, and my job at the time, I was director of series development at Walt Disney Television Animation. I'd gotten into the business to write, and I started out as a much more junior executive, and my thinking was, this is the day job, I'll go home every night and write.
Okay.
So 5 years later, I hadn't done any writing of my own. I mean, because I would get home every night and be tired. And I did a lot of writing as part of the job, including, among other things, I wrote the Gargoyles Bible and so many pitches, because the main part of my job is that every 6 months, we went up in front of Michael Eisner, who at the time was the chairman of the Walt Disney Company, and who was famously a micromanager, which worked out very well for us.
Yeah.
And we would pitch him a slate of shows, somewhere between 6 and 10 shows every 6 months. And because we had this thing which we called the Beast, which was the Disney afternoon, Michael knew, and we knew, that he had to pick at least one or two. So there was never a time when we pitched the slate of shows and he would pick zero. He always, I mean, I don't know what his internal thoughts were. Maybe he picked the one, well, this is the one that sucks the least. I don't know. Or maybe he just picked the one that he loved. But the point is that he would always pick one. And then whichever one he picked, my job was to help it up on its feet, give it a little shove out the door, hire someone on the writing side to be the writer, story editor, producer, or showrunner on it. And meanwhile, then I'm moving on to the next 6-month slate of shows. On Gargoyles, which I had created and took me 2 years to sell, and I won't go into too much detail about that because I got a whole panel about that on Sunday.
I'll be there.
We had a situation where we'd sold the show, and it was very atypical for what Disney did in those days. And so finding someone to produce the show was difficult for my production counterpart executive. It took me a long time to find Michael Reeves, who was our first story editor and the amazing head writer for the show. But I found Michael, but it took a long time for them to find Frank Parr, who ultimately became my co-showrunner and producing partner. But we were on a deadline at that point. We had to make decisions. No one was there to make decisions, so I did. And by the time they found Frank, I felt a couple things. One, that as much as I love Darkwing Duck and Bonkers, those weren't up my alley. I mean, those weren't the type of shows. I'd come from a comic book background. I'd worked at DC Comics for years. But Gargoyles was right up my alley, for starters. It was my kind of show. But also, by that time, I was fully invested in it because I had created it. It had taken me 2 years to sell it. I pitched versions of this show to Eisner 3 times before he bought it. And then in production, I was making all these decisions that normally a producer would make. And I went to my bosses and I said, I want to produce this show with Frank. And they said, oh, no, you've never produced before. And I said, well, that's true, but I've never been a development executive before, 5 years ago, and that worked out all right. So they went away and thought about it for a bit, and then they came back and they said, all right, but you can't quit your current job. You have to do both jobs, and we're going to pay you for the lesser of the two. So for 10 months, I worked 2 full-time jobs and survived. And that's how I became the producer on the show.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was a wonderful answer. Very verbose, as I expected.
Right. We know who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
These guys won't get a word in edgewise unless you guys ask them a specific question.
Yeah. No more questions. I do want to give a shout out to other Greg Bishansky. You probably don't remember me at all, but I remember you back in the mid-2000s on the Toon Zone forums. And I think it is so cool that you are where you are at. You're at where you are now. So.
Thank you. Wouldn't have gotten here without any of these people, especially my co-host and partner in crime here.
Just a quick note that there is a second QA microphone in an aisle over here, so you can stand in a shorter line and confuse everybody on stage.
Baron, first I want to thank you all for coming out to Convergence. Minnesota doesn't always get this awesome of a group. I've got a fun question for everyone on stage. Which of the Gargoyles would you be most excited to have a drink or a joint and a deep conversation with? Bonus, which of the Gargoyles would you dread getting stuck in a conversation with?
Thalog. We just don't see eye to eye. And if we start drinking, it really goes to shit.
That's fair. Oh, that's great.
Who I would most like to hang out with, I would have to say Lexington. As for who I would dread, despite the fact that I have her tattooed on me, Demona, she'd kill me. She'd kill all of us.
Probably Brooklyn. I think if we're gonna have a beer and we're gonna chill, it's got to be with Brooklyn. Would not want to meet Demona. Thank you. No. My girl, I love her. She's broken.
That was my answer. I'm a Brooklyn fangirl. I would love to hang out with Brooklyn. But if I have to choose another one, since Brooklyn's already taken, I'd probably hang out with Katana.
Oh, yes!
But I'm still saying Demona.
I'll share Brooklyn with you.
Okay.
So conversely, I want to get a drink with Demona because I want to give her a big hug. Girl needs a hug. She's so interesting. The more I watch the show, the older I get, the more I'm so compelled by Demona. I want to know what makes her tick. So I would try to figure her out over a drink. As for somebody I would dread getting a drink with, Elisa as a gargoyle, because she was so naive and out of her element, and she just needed to get back to herself.
I think Hudson for me. I feel like we could really bond over true crime shows, I love a mystery. And I feel like anyone would be good to get a drink with. I don't think anyone needs to be excluded, Yeah. Everyone's invited.
Is this thing on? I don't know how to turn it on. Is it automatic? Oh my God, I've been farting the whole time. No. It's been sitting here. I would want to hang out with Hyena. Because we could get in some trouble together. That would be mine.
Daddy's girl. I'd want to hang out with my daddy. As much as I could. As for my poor mother, she was misunderstood. We're working it out. We're in therapy. 30 years later. I think that I wouldn't want to hang out with the Weird Sisters. Is that what they were called?
Yeah, they were the Weird Sisters.
Them girls was bitches.
I think I miss Ed so much.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even talk about it before I'll start to cry. I mean, so I think I'd pick Hudson. I just. And who would I not want to? Probably Iago. Just, you know. Yeah, I think Iago. But the truth is, I'd be cool hanging with Iago too. These are my kids, you know. I don't have one that I don't want to spend time with. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
What job did you all want to be when you were younger?
Say it one more time.
What job did you want to be when you were younger?
I very much wanted to be a writer. I have gotten my wish.
I wanted to be Mrs. Michael Jackson.
Not
I
Prince.
did not get my wish.
I always, since I can remember, wanted to be an actor. I didn't know I didn't think about being a voice actor. That was not on my radar at all until I was Jamie Thomason and this other guy that was what's his name? Jeff Howell, who's a casting director now and was over at Disney. And they heard me talking and said, God, you have a great voice. You should do voiceover. And I go, okay.
That's how it was.
I'm a teacher, and I always wanted to be a teacher. But I will say, when I was little, I did not understand what my dad's job was, and I told everyone he was a police officer. I could wrap my head around that one.
I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was little. My father loved horse racing and watching horse races, and sometimes the horse would fall, and, you know, he told me, unfortunately, horses that fell were often euthanized. And I would, you know, be like, Daddy, pause the TV. I'm going to super glue its leg back together. But I did not go into equine medicine. I'm an actor.
I also wanted to be a veterinarian. Really? Good people. Yes. But not for horses. I loved animals, and animals flocked to me when I was a kid. So I always had the pets would come to me, and I loved it. And then I got through school and science and all that, and it became all theory, and theory was boring. So that's when I followed people's advice who kept saying, but Ken, you need to do something with your art. So that's where I ended up.
I wanted to sing and dance and perform, and I sucked at all of that, so I wanted to be a paleontologist as my backup.
Younger, how much younger? I'll go back a few years. King of Hell, but I got to live that vicariously through Mark Shepard.
I am living my dream. As far as I can remember, I always wanted to be an actor. I was a singer before I was an actor, so I always wanted to be a singer. I still want to be a singer when I grow up, but so I'm trying my best. It's my moonlighting job, but yeah, I'm living the dream. This is all I ever really wanted to do. So,
Thank you. Over here.
Aloha all.
Aloha.
I want to say from that, one thing that shows how incredible Gargoyles is that me and my friends came from Hawaii in the middle of July to come here for this weekend. Hence Hence the kukui nut lays that you both are still wearing and haven't thrown away, thankfully. But yeah, what I want. This question is for anyone who feels like they want to answer. Gargoyles was, among so many other things, a gathering of such incredible talent, both behind and in front of the mic, at every level of design and production. And sidebar, Jennifer, Greg, I love that Voices highlights people, not just actors, but also people in sound design and music and all those different elements. That's incredible. So what I wanted to ask, is there anyone, another actor, someone else in the production who's not on this stage that you would like to highlight on this 30th anniversary and celebrate their contribution to the show?
Great question.
I'll start. Carl Johnson, who was our composer, and the music of Gargoyles brings so much to the series. Even now when I write the comic books, I hear that in my head, and that was all Carl. Carl composed, orchestrated, conducted. He did amazing work, and you're right, there are probably 100 people I could have named, all of whom their contributions were incredible. I've already mentioned Michael Reeves and Frank Parr to name two, but I definitely wanted to bring up Carl because that music is so essential.
Iconic.
I would bring up Jamie Thomas. He was the cast.
Yo.
Jamie Thomason.
Yeah.
Thomason, excuse me, who gave a lot of us our very first shot, who took a chance on someone who had never done a voiceover before. And it was the 90s, so I was working in film a lot. I was being raped, bludgeoned, and killed in most of them, because that's what happened in the 90s. Even if I was playing a doctor, I was naked on page 4. Like, the shirt just came off. And they gave me the opportunity to play this strong, amazing, incredible woman that they would never give me that part in a live action at that time, but I got to do it in Gargoyles. And he saw something in me and in my voice, and he gave me a first-timer and you a first-timer this shot. So shout out to him.
I say, Greg,
Yeah.
you're my inspiration, and I love you. You're just great. That's all I want to say.
I'm on the stage. I said someone who isn't.
Beth. Your wife.
Now that's a truth. Without Beth, none of this happens. This definitely doesn't happen.
I was also going to say Jamie. Honestly, I think I learned all of the swear words from Jamie. I'm pretty sure. He's worked on so many shows with my dad, and if I was ever sick, I would go with my dad to recordings, and Jamie's amazing. He's doing so much of the acting alongside, and it's just so cool. It's really special.
Yeah.
I want to shout out the voice of my favorite character, Elisa Maza, Sally Richardson. She's just amazing. She brought Elisa to life, and Elisa was such a great. I don't know that I thought of her as a role model. I just thought of her as got all these red leather jackets and black tank tops and blue jeans, and that was my closet as a preteen. She's just amazing. Her silky, beautiful voice, and she directs now. Yeah. She works as a director a lot, and I just think she's really inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Greg Guler. My art is very much influenced by what he did on Gargoyles, and I think that his work is absolutely beautiful. His issue of the Gargoyles comic that he did is stunning. Mm-hmm. He's a fantastic artist and someone that I still look up to.
all gonna steal them all before you get down here to the end. Honestly, if I can't talk to that guy, then I'm gonna have to say Frank Parr. Woo! I mean, he had to work with him, so that's special. It's really got a tolerance level.
We had him on our podcast once, Roy Sato and all the other overseas animators who work long hours to draw cell after cell after cell and really bring the show beautifully to life. Unsung heroes, those people.
Frank and Jamie are my two guys, and I wouldn't have thought. I mean, I thought to myself, but the music was just stunning. It's outstanding. In fact, it's so funny you brought it up because I was going to ask you. I want a copy of that music. I want to get because I would loop it and just play it all the time. I mean, it's like. I remember asking somebody at another convention, where can I get that music? Because it's, you don't, if you hear those first, it just puts you in the mood. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's why we're still here.
Great question. Thank you.
Mahalo nui loa to all of you.
Thank you.
Over here.
Hi. So, okay. Start. Thank you, Greg, for making Gargoyles. It is the reason why I write now. I want to be a writer, kind of like you when I grow up. Gargoyles was a huge inspiration for me. It was a huge introduction to, here's what you can do with things. You don't need to look at it this way. So, first off, thank you for that. Second off, the actual question itself. Character inspiration. What was the creation behind, especially the Pack, Cold Stone, and Desdemona and Iago, the mutants, such like that. But just, what brought the inspiration? If that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, the inspiration for most of the gargoyle characters were actual stone gargoyles. I mean, I was, as a teenager, fascinated with gargoyles, and I took a trip to Europe when I was 16, and every time I saw a gargoyle, I'd take a picture of it or buy a postcard or something like that. And I was just sort of intrigued. There isn't much mythology about gargoyles. Like, why are these up here? And among the limited mythology is that they're there to scare off evil spirits. And I thought, well, that's so odd. You've got scary creatures that you voluntarily put up there to scare off scarier creatures, I guess. And I thought, so I just extrapolated backwards from there to try and come up with a reason why people would think that these scary creatures would protect. And it grew from there. Different characters had different inspirations. We did initially a comedy development of the show that was very much influenced by Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears. And there was no version of Goliath in the comedy development.
I'm funny.
If I had known how funny Keith was, but no. Long before we cast anybody, so we had a version of Lex and Brooklyn. The Lex character was this technological savant, but he looked like Brooklyn. And then the Brooklyn character, and that character was named Lassie. He was a guy, but he saw Lassie on TV and admired Lassie so much that he chose the name Lassie. And then the character that eventually became Brooklyn was called Amp. And he looked more like Lex, but he was sort of the leader and gung-ho sort of hero type in his own mind. And then Broadway was a female gargoyle named Coco.
Oh my God.
And I've used all those names, except for Lassie. I've used all those names in the comics since for other characters. But, and then Hudson was the gargoyle who didn't like adventure and just sat at home in this chair watching TV a lot. And his name was Ralph. But then that show didn't sell. And so when we redeveloped it, Greg Guler and I created the character of Goliath. And we took the entire comedy show and put it through the prism of Goliath and came out the other end with the show that you all saw. At which point, the inspiration for Ralph, whose name was now Hudson, was really Lou Grant. I didn't know Ed yet. I didn't know what a wonderful human being Ed was. And it still kills me that I'm using the past tense. But I knew Lou Grant. And so Hudson was very much based on Lou Grant specifically. And if you, any specific character, I can probably give you some influences and stuff like that. Xanatos began, for example, as a character called Xavier, and was very much a comedic character in the original development in the vein of Captain Hook or Duke Igthorn. And the character of Owen that Jeff Bennett played in the original comedy development, Owen was a human being, but in the very first episode he gets hit by a magic spell and is turned into an anthropomorphic aardvark. And spends the whole rest of the series trying to get the magician to turn him back into a human. That didn't end up being what Owen was in the show. But my point is that Owen was very influenced by the character of Toady in Gummy Bears. They all had their origins differently. The inspirations were all different. But that's the general gist of it, I think. Over here.
Thank you. Well, Gargoyles has a very rich form of storytelling, full of great character dynamics and drama, but I don't think the clever humor gets mentioned enough. So my open question for everyone is, do you have a favorite joke or funny line from the series?
I do, but go for it.
My favorite was the first time that we came across what Elisa does, and because we had, as I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a question about my line reading, and because I said, a detective, and we were like, and they were like, no, just say it, no, but. He doesn't know the word. And so that became a kind of strange running joke.
The biggest running joke in our recording sessions was Sally saying street pizza. Street pizza. Street pizza. But for me, the funniest moment in the whole series for me is when Elisa's turned into a gargoyle. And she and Goliath are flying side by side, and he comments on how beautiful she looks as a gargoyle, and she's like, "What? You thought I was ugly before?" And he says, "Whoa, updraft!" That's my single fetish.
No, the other funny line was when I said to Macbeth, I said, "You know her? Know her? I named her."
Anyone else have one?
Jalapeno.
So, Keith, well, tell where it came from.
Well, it's something I say all the time, and was it Jamie?
Well, tell where you got it from, though.
Well, I got it from one of my favorite singers in the world. Her name is Bernadine Mitchell, and I was in Atlanta doing a show, and I went to see her club act. And I thought, this woman is magnificent. Oh my God. She made me feel like I was the only person in the audience, and she was singing to me. And when she started her show, she opened her show, she said, I know y'all came to hear me sing tonight, but I ain't gonna sing for you, I'm gonna sing for you. And since we're not in church, if the Spirit moves you, I don't want you to say hallelujah, I want you to say jalapeno. And so from then on, you know, when the moment got hot and moved us, everybody in the whole audience would go, jalapeno! And I was like, that thing tickled me so bad, it was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I have been saying it now for almost 40 years.
So in the booth, he's saying that all the time. And at some point, Jamie Thomason, our voice director, turns to me and he says, but you can't get that in the show.
Challenge accepted.
And I go, I bet I can. And then we had a story editor, the late, great Gary Sperling, another guy I miss tremendously, wrote a perfectly normal script. Or at least story editor. I can't remember if he wrote it, but he was a story editor on the script Protection, which, by the way, had no jalapenos in it whatsoever when he wrote it. And the way it worked is our writers would write a story or a story editor, and then I, as the showrunner, was the last. I did the final draft, and usually we had phenomenal writers, phenomenal story editors. I usually did very little to these scripts. We'd always talk them out well in advance. There was never anything in it that, you know, I would go, wow, where'd you get that from? That's not working. So it was all pretty routine by the time I turned out the final draft, except on this script, where I wrote in this whole subplot about Tony Dracon offering jalapeno peppers to Elisa, who then offers them to Broadway, and then at the very end, Broadway offers one to Goliath, and he says,
jalapeno?
So Gary reads this script where I've added all this stuff, and he's like, what is wrong with you? And so I explained that I had to put Jamie Thomason in his place. He goes, okay, I understand. And then we got to the booth, and Frank Parr, my partner, likewise had the initial reaction of, what are you doing? And I said, well, I gotta put, you know, Jamie bet me I have to put he in his place. He's like, oh yeah, I understand. But he said if we're gonna do it, we're gonna really do it. So it wasn't like he just read it, just there. It was big. Do it big.
Jalapeno!
There we go. And when we got to the mix stage, Frank again, this wasn't me, it was Frank. He was like, no, don't just say it. We're gonna pull back across the whole city and echo it out. And it became huge. Well, then so we did that, and then Jamie was briefly put in his place. But then he goes, well, I bet you can't get Hudson to say it. And this went on for quite a while with him just trying to up the ante and me like going, you're gonna lose every time. I'm in charge of the scripts. I can do what I want. And then finally, I also came up, thought that, you know, we weren't allowed to curse. It was a cartoon for, you know, an afternoon cartoon that a lot of adults watch, some of whom are sitting up here, but a lot of kids watch, some of whom are sitting up here. And so we couldn't curse on stage, and I thought, oh, we could use jalapeno as a curse word. You know, Goliath with Sanders with jalapeno, or something like that. And I thought that was useful to us. Then Frank comes into my office one day, and he goes, "You got to stop with the jalapenos." And I'm like, "No, look, this is why." He's like, "The board artists, they're about to all quit." So if you watch the series in order, what you'll see is that we have the very first one in the episode Protection, and then you see Hudson say it, and then Brooklyn says it, and it sort of spots to all the other characters saying it. And then it starts happening all the time, and then it stops. And then in The Journey, which was my last episode, I did one more I knew it was my last episode, I did one more for old time's sake, and one of the executives came in, Jay Fukuda, who's a great guy. Jay comes in and says, "Hey, I thought Frank said you weren't allowed to do that anymore." And I love Frank, I do, but I said, "Yeah, that's why I'm doing it." Because face it, I'm a son of a bitch. Anyway, that's the jalapenos. Anyone else have a funny one, or should we move on?
It's not as funny as jalapenos.
Okay. Question about the writing. So in the beginning, the first season, you talk about, like Xanatos talks about the Emir, and then you follow up with an episode later on. There's like the cyberbiotics security guy, and then he like later on towards the end of the show, he pies Goliath in the face, and like I see like a lot of seeds were planted early on. So kind of question, how much did you know, how much did you already have in your head of this is what's going to happen before you started doing the show? And how much was it more like, what can I fit in here based on what I have, and how's it going to work?
There's a lot of both, frankly. So I think the big sweeping things we planned out in advance. We had Goliath ask the princess to take care of the eggs. And we didn't know if we'd get a second season. We hoped we did. And if we did, we're like, okay, then the eggs will show up, and here's an egg right here. And so I think a lot of the big picture stuff we had planned way in advance. We had all these ideas for. But a lot of the little things were things that we kept ourselves open to things. So for example, there was a character played by the amazing David Warner, the Archmage. And the first appearance of the Archmage, he's really just a cliched magician, evil magician who's out for revenge, not even for a particularly great reason, but it was a great episode. And Jamie cast David Warner in the role, who then took this little cliched magician and did amazing things with him. And I said to Jamie, we got to bring this character back. This is fantastic. Jamie said, you just killed him off. I said, I'll fix that. I'll fix that. Or Clancy Brown, the amazing Clancy Brown, played multiple characters for us, including Hakon the Viking and Wolf of the Pack. And I thought, you know, what if they're related? What if Clancy has to talk to the ghost of Hakon, who's also played by Clancy? Or Keith laughing at some joke in the room maniacally, and me thinking, you know, Goliath never gets to laugh maniacally. And then I was at a mix session for the pilot, and this was not a typical mix station. This was on the main mix stage at Disney. Most of our shows were mixed at Advantage Audio, but for the movie version of the pilot, that was mixed on the main stage at Disney. And when they back up and reverse on lines, usually it goes mute. You don't hear the words backwards. But on the main stage, you do. And I kept hearing this word over and over again, Thalog, Thalog, Thalog. And I'm like, what is that? And it's Goliath, not spelled backwards, but said backwards. So between that word, Thalog, and me wanting to give him a chance, I mean, Goliath's a fantastic character, but there's certain things Goliath is never going to do. I wanted to give this brilliant actor a chance to do something completely different. And so Thalog was born. So again, if you look at the big picture stuff, all that we pretty much had planned. But if you look at little discoveries, you mentioned the Emir. Michael Reeves wrote an episode where Owen says, you'll be late for the meeting, your meeting with the Emir, and Xanto says something like, I don't remember the exact line, but something like, let him wait, or whatever. And I thought, and Michael's reason for putting that in there is to make Xanatos seem important. You know, in other words, he can keep an Emir waiting. But I'm sitting there going, who's this Emir? And that was something that we just, all of us on the writing staff, kept our eyes open to. Like, what can we pick up on? What little seed? There were a lot of seeds we planted very intentionally. But there were other things that we were like, maybe that was a seed even though we didn't plant it. And we just built on that. And the idea ultimately became this sort of tapestry, that it wasn't just a linear story, let alone an episodic story. One of the things we definitely did not want to do was that every episode basically ends where it begins, you know, where we just, by the time it's over, things are back to normal. We didn't want to have a normal. We wanted everything to continue to move and to grow. We wanted characters to change and evolve. If Macbeth may start as a villain, but ultimately he's going to become more and more sympathetic and may even become a hero by the time we're done. Xanatos is going to have a kid. I mean, all sorts of things were possible on a show that wasn't determined to make every episode end where it begins. And so we kept our eyes open and our ears open, I guess, for little things we could pick up on and continue to grow as we went. And one of the things that's always been great about Gargoyles, and this will sound truly geeky, geekier than everything else I've said here tonight. But everything about this show always seemed to click. For example, we were working on an episode called The Mirror. And that was being written by Lydia Morano, story edited by Bryn Chandler Reeves. And I was thinking about it. We were having a little trouble cracking the story on it. And all of a sudden I got this idea. Because we were introducing the character of Puck, played by Brent Spiner, into the show. And all of a sudden I got this thing just occurred to me. And I called, Bryn and Lydia were working out of Bryn's house that day. And I called them up and I said, listen, Owen is Puck. And they said, we know! And the thing about Gargoyles is that I've had a lot of shows where that happens, where something just clicks and you're like, oh, it's right. I've never had a show like Gargoyles where it felt like, oh my God, there's a correct answer out there. There's a parallel universe where these characters actually exist. And there is a right answer. And I'm not actually talented, I just am tuning in. And that's the way this show was. And we just tried to keep our attuned.
Greg?
Yeah, keep Ryan's hand up.
Greg,
Over.
I'm sorry. Stop. I'm sorry to interrupt, Greg, but if anyone has a question specifically for Keith, he's going to have to leave shortly. So if you two would please go to the front of the lines. Thank you.
People with Keith questions, come up to the mic.
People with Keith questions.
Shout out to the people who stayed in this line.
About 10 minutes, so they're going to have to be short.
Yes, so I'll cut through my praise of you, the reason I bought the ticket for this thing. So the episode, The Mirror, you're talking about as a black nerd, a blurred, when you turned into human form, we knew you were black. We celebrated that. I have all your chesty toys and things like that. But what was the thought process of making his skin tone black? Was that, of course, you are, but writing that in there with all the other diversity in the show, what was the thought process of making him a darker complected human and human form?
Well, it was important to us that the Gargoyles weren't white guys, you know. And all right, fine, we've got an episode where they've got to transform into humans. So, all right, if they're going to transform into humans, we're going to have to pick a complexion. I mean, we have to. And so the fallback was like, all right, well, you know, let's use our actors. So, okay, a bunch of our Gargoyle actors were white guys. But this guy wasn't. Why would I make him into a white guy? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then I also thought about it, and I thought, by this time, Goliath's feelings for Elisa have started to emerge. And I thought, well, maybe subconsciously also, Goliath is thinking about who would be the best match for Elisa. I don't know, that's kind of wishy-washy to me, but the main answer is the first one. But that thought did cross my mind that, you know, that there may have been an element of what pairs up with the woman I love. Maybe, I don't know. I don't feel strongly about that.
I also feel like there was an inherent feeling of inclusiveness in the Gargoyle world. You know, the fact that he was attracted. I mean, I think he was always attracted to Elisa Maza. She was one of the few females around, but I mean. But, I mean, she wasn't hard on the eye, no matter who's looking, you know what
I mean? Any words to encourage white people?
Nice jacket, you know?
We try not to encourage white people. Is there a Goliath question here?
Oh, yes, I'm not just a photographer, but also a fan. I was wondering what your favorite episode was and why.
My favorite episode? You know, it's very difficult to isolate one favorite episode. But one of my favorite moments in the whole catalog is that feeling on the top of the hill when he goes the wrong way. He's led the wrong way, and he finally figures it out, and he stands on the top of the hill, and he says, "I've lost everything, even my revenge!" I mean, still my favorite moment.
We could go on with favorite moments for everybody else, but I want to get the Keith stuff first, so.
Hello. Hi. My name is Elsa. I have a question, yes, for Keith, but also for everybody else, but you can answer whatever. One of my favorite things growing up is just how much wisdom the show had and how there's a lot of great examples of like positive masculinity and just like a lot of inclusiveness. Like we had a indigenous black main character woman, and that was just phenomenal. So my question for you, Keith, is what was some wisdom from the show that stuck with you and served as a motivator these past 30 years?
Well, as I said, I mean, the inclusiveness. I said early on, when I grow up, I want to be like Goliath. Because, again, inherent in the writing was an inclusiveness and a humanity that is inspiring. It continues to be inspiring to me. You know, I kind of joke about it, but when I grow up, I want to be like Goliath. I think his values as a father figure, as the head of a household, as someone who wants to protect their community. And when you say when you care about your community, you care about everyone within that community. That means your friend's cousin, your friend's cousin's cousins, your friend's cousin's friend who comes to visit them, and everybody else around them. You know, I mean, it's a very ambitious lot to say, we will protect the island of Manhattan. But, you know, on the island of Manhattan is a lot of folk. And they don't all look like you, but they are all a part of you. So, I mean, to me, that continues to be inspiring. I mean, that's, you know, if you think about it in terms of what is sort of missing right now in our society, is that kind of inclusiveness.
Yes.
You know, so you can continue to watch Gargoyles right now and have a sense of hope that you don't have watching a whole lot of other shit.
Again, we'll return to your question. Was there anyone else with a Keith question? Yeah, right here.
Oh, thank you so much for taking my question. I actually was first introduced to him through The Thing. That was one of my first horror films, and it's still one of my favorites. One day I'll get a tattoo. We'll figure that out later. But I was kind of thinking about it earlier this morning, and I kind of brought it up with my friend who's also here, and I was kind of thinking, like, I know you've had a lot of experience under your belt kind of before you started your position, I guess, in Gargoyles, as well as some of the other people also here on the stage. What was kind of like some of like your inspiration, or maybe kind of like how you kind of figured out your characters' feel, I guess, for the show? I know sometimes there's like, oh, this character really inspired my character, but sometimes it's just people you know in your life, and I'm just kind of curious. And this can be answered for everybody else later, too.
I mean, it's also kind of a convergence, because it includes everybody that you know. But, I mean, you know, for me, as an actor all the time, it always starts on the page. And if love ain't there, it ain't there. But if it is there, we know how to eke it out. I can suck melancholy out of an egg. If it's on the page. So, I mean, does that answer your question?
I mean, yes, but also like, yes, technically. I was trying to think of more of like like any like inspirations vocal-wise, not just.
Well, at the audition, the direction was to come in. Doing the archetype was Sean Connery. So I came in trying to do my best Sean Connery, which I don't think was very good, because Greg said, forget the Sean Connery, just do yours. At the time, I didn't think it was all that bad, but when I think about it now, I don't think I did it very well, you know.
I think that would have really changed the character's perspective.
What's funny is John Rhys Davies, when he came in to play Macbeth, he was doing Connery. And we didn't even ask for that. But he just came in and did Connery. When I remember when Ed Asner auditioned on the so most audition sides, they have the lines, the speech you're going to read.
He had to audition?
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. We had auditions set for all the characters, including Hudson. But yeah, wait, you'll hear. There's also a page in front that describes the character. It's just a few paragraphs that sum up the character. And the last line on the Hudson character was, "Hudson hates spunk." Now, many of you are way too young to get the significance, but I heard a few chuckles. And there was a show called The Mary Tyler Moore Show. And in the very first episode, Mary gets up in front of her boss, Lou Grant, interviewing for a job, and
I hate spunk.
And Lou says to her, "Kid, you've got spunk." And Mary gets all smiley, and then he goes, "I hate spunk." And the thing was, again, I had Lou Grant in mind for the character of Hudson. I never thought in a million years we could get Ed Asner. He was so far above what I thought we were capable of getting. And then lo and behold, he walks in to audition, which was his agent giving him the thing, and he comes in to audition. And I talked to Ed afterwards. I don't mean like after he auditioned, I mean much afterwards. And he told me, yeah, when I saw that, when I saw Hudson hates spunk, he's like, "Oh, I got this job." That was his first thought. Then he said, except the moment before I started speaking into the mic, this second thought crossed my mind. What if I don't get this job?
Greg, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I need to whisk Keith David away to Cinema Wraps.
What am I being whisked to do?
We're taking you upstairs to introduce your movie.
Oh, shit.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Keith David.
I was going to push it. Thank you.
Anyway, so Ed gets up and he reads, and I don't know if it helped him that suddenly he had this horrifying thought right before he started reading, but he's fantastic. And then Jamie says to him, "Great, can you do it with a Scottish accent?" So this Midwestern Jew, like that, turns on a Scottish accent, and there's Hudson for you. Which I know has nothing to do with your actual question. So for any of the rest of you, if you want, is there someone that sort of helped inspire your character? And then we'll get back to the other two questions, and then if we've got any time left, we'll get to the rest of you guys. So hang tight. The odds of us getting to all of you are very slim. Because, again, I'm very long-winded, but...
It inspired me. It was, like Keith said, the writing. I mean, just reading the monologue, the audition part was the monologue where Lexington's looking in the window at the TVs and the screens and all that. And it just came out of me because of the writing again. It really does, it's just there right on the page. And I'm not one of those, Jeff Glenn Bennett do 1,000 voices. I do this voice like higher or lower or with an accent. I think they tried to get me like to do extra voices one time. I like did a guard, and I did it, and they're like, no, it sounds exactly like Lexington trying to do a guard. So, yeah. Brigitte?
I thought it was so beautifully written and classically written, and I was trained, I was Shakespearean trained. I never got a chance to ever do that in any work, and it was poetry the way she spoke, and yet she was so strong and sassy and smart. And so basically I'm saying it was the writing. It was the writing. It was the writing.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah.
Anyone have a favorite episode or a favorite moment from the show that they want to mention? This is one of the earlier questions. Yeah.
To piggyback on what Keith had said earlier about inclusion, about, all that stuff, a moment that still resonates with me today that I keep thinking of, the quote in particular is, "It is the nature of humankind to hate what they do not understand. Their ways are not our ways." And it's so true still today that we tend to fear and reject the things that we don't understand, and we need to go beyond that. So that's something that's really still very meaningful to me.
The episode where Broadway, Elisa with the gun, I was so little when I saw that, and it really influences my teaching all the time. You shouldn't shy away from talking about really hard things, even with young children, because then it makes children feel like, oh, we can't talk about it, and then you fear what you don't understand. And the goal in educating is to make sure children feel safe asking tough questions and building onto their understandings. And I feel like you did such a good job with that in Gargoyles for so many children and grown-ups, really figuring out, how do I face these really tricky things? And you see guns in media all the time, and I teach 5-year-olds, and they're playing with pretend guns and their imaginary games all the time, and being able to really see those consequences and see how you can fix them and learn from them, I think is really amazing.
Very nice.
What was the other question? Inspiration, something that
Inspired.
that you've, am I getting this right?
Inspired your performance.
Stuck with you and still inspires you. Was there anyone who had a response to that?
Ultimately, the lesson of Demona: take responsibility for your actions. Don't blame everyone for your problems, your self-inflicted problems, really. I mean, it's hard, I get it. When we mess up, we don't want to take responsibility, but you have to own up.
I also keep thinking about Demona and specifically the City of Stone 4-episode arc, and how much her single-minded focus on revenge and the insularity you go within because you're so focused on the thing that's tearing you up inside. The access code is alone.
Yeah.
It's just her loneliness, and how when we go inside, we isolate, and it's so dangerous to do that to oneself. But if you look at society, we have a pandemic of isolation, of people not talking to each other, of people feeling like they're alone. And I think that's an important thing to watch for in yourselves and in the people immediately around you. Like, how can I help you feel less isolated before you get to that dark, scary, what's the word, when someone gets spurred to do something terrible? Radicalized place. Yeah. Thank you.
So, first off, thanks for the show. I was going into middle school right when it came out, and I love.
Yeah, that doesn't make me feel old at all.
I know, right?
I think he should sit down right now.
What I wanted to say was when I was obsessed with animation, still am, I needed a show that was deep and robust and everything, and this show just hit every note. So thank you so much for being that and continuing it on. My question that I've always wondered, so first season went, it succeeded, it's so daring, and what I wanted to know was going on behind the scenes when you pitched the idea of, hey, we're going to do this whole thing, we're going to split the formula that worked in half, get half the people off the show basically for most of the season, send the rest around the world. What was that in the back end? It worked.
Don't get
but
me
wow.
started.
How much time do we have left to this?
Okay, so the first season we did 13 episodes on a 10-month sliding schedule, and that was hard. Then they came back for season 2 and ordered 52 episodes on a 10-month sliding schedule. So we had to do a lot of things. One of those things we did was we went from 1 story editing team to 4. One of the things we did is we went from 1 directing team to 3.5. But we also understood we had to expand the world. That if we had stayed in Manhattan, as insular as that was, not that we didn't have a lot of great stories to tell in Manhattan, but if we had stayed there for 65 episodes and the world was still just 6 gargoyles, or 5 gargoyles and a beast, all of them, by the way, male, that really limited what the show was and or could be. So we made a conscious decision that, by the way, even in the comics now, I'm still trying to correct, that we needed to create more balance in the show. We needed more, we had great female characters in the show, but we needed more female gargoyles in the show, like this one. And like Katana, and like Coldfire, and like, again, more that I'm still trying to build into the show, or the property at least in the comics. But we wanted to expand the world, and we wanted to bring more cultures in, and we wanted to create hope. That if the gargoyles were just Demona, the 5 guys, and the beast, that's a species that's going extinct. Not just in trouble, but flat out extinct. It may take 150 years because gargoyles live about 200 years, but still they're doomed. And Goliath is fundamentally an optimist. When Keith talks about being inspired by who Goliath is, when push comes to shove, Goliath is a guy who has been through hard stuff. And somehow, I don't mean every moment of every day, every night, but somehow still manages to be an optimist. And to pay heed to that, we had to give hope. We had to show that there were other clans out there. Not a lot, not, millions of gargoyles out there, but hundreds. And we had to show that there was a way, at least potentially, forward. And that meant going to all these places. And plus, we had all these story ideas. I mean, we had a show about Scottish monsters. How can I not do the Loch Ness Monster? We had a show about gargoyles. How was I not going to do set an episode with Notre Dame Cathedral on it? I mean, there were just things that we were like, well, we can't not do that. And then also there was a point when Michael Eisner said to me, so look, this is 1995-ish. I'm in a meeting with Eisner, and he says, I want to buy Marvel. 95. Disney, the head of Disney says, I want to buy Marvel. All the other executives in the room talk him out of it. He could have gotten it for almost nothing, because they hadn't made a movie that was successful Well, ever. They said, oh, you don't want it. And he's like, well, look, Warner Brothers has the DC Comics characters like Superman and Batman. We need to compete with that. If we're not buying Marvel, and he turned to me and he said, could we make an action universe out of Gargoyles? And I said yes. So we did a bunch of backdoor pilots as well. New Olympians, Pendragon. There are more. I'm blanking out at the moment. Yeah, Time Dancer, Dark Ages, but we didn't really. Bad Guys, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. If you think of Gargoyles as our Fantastic Four in 1961, we can build from that. And so part of the world tour was also introducing all these other heroes around the world, the Golem and the Panthers and Cucullin and all these other heroes, because we were going to build something bigger. That all went away when Eisner went away. But for a while, we had this big, really big, ambitious plan. You know, the irony is, of course, years and years later, Disney buys Marvel, pays a fucking fortune for it. But, you know, such is life. Over here.
All right, let's say if you had an episode where the characters body switch with each other, what character would you like to voice just for fun?
Voices are not.
And or what character would you like to see switched with each other?
I'd like to do Goliath.
That's the first thing I thought of. I want to hear Tom's voice coming out of Goliath's face.
Yes. I could do a mean Demona. Could.
Wow.
You have such a great voice, by the way. I told you that today at the signing. It's really special. You should go into voice work. Maybe Hudson.
That'd be hysterical. Yeah.
How's your Scottish brogue?
I went to marry ye. I'm not that good.
I could say Doggy.
He's coming for your job, Erin.
I could be the doggy. I could be Bronx, you know.
There you go.
I could do it. I could do it.
Hey, someone
else?
Frank.
All right.
Yeah, I want to be Bronx. I want to work on my creature voices more. So I feel like I could infuse some feminine energy in Bronx. He needs it.
All right, well, we are over time. I'm sorry for all of you whose questions we didn't get to. I hope you have all had fun. Let's have a hand for the amazing people on this stage. We got a bunch of other fun things happening. There are more Gargoyles panels. There's a Young Justice panel, a Spider-Man panel. We've got pie. We've got a radio play. I know a bunch of you have auditioned already, and some of you, we've got 2 more audition sessions at 12:30.
12:30 tomorrow and 5 o'clock.
Oh, there's 2.
12:30 and 5 o'clock tomorrow, because we had such a huge turnout today. We added another opportunity, and then the performance is
2 o'clock Saturday.
2 o'clock Saturday. So even if you're not auditioning, you're going to want to come see it. I'm saying now, the radio play is a Gargoyles themed radio play. It is ridiculous, and I think you'll all really love it. So come see that. We got these people. We got a bunch of these people in the show. I know it's cheating because they didn't audition, but Brigitte and Thom and Zehra are all in the show, and maybe some more of the people up here I'm in the show. So please have a great con. Thank you for coming. Thanks for watching Gargoyle.
Also, live podcast in here tomorrow. Voices from the Erie.
Live podcast.